My name's Dan Cummings. This is my 1968 Subaru 360. Modifications are themed around the idea of making it look sort of like a modern Le Mans car, thinking like if Subaru, instead of going rally racing in the early 70s, decided to go to Le Mans using kind of modern looks, modern aero, what would the car result like? And so that's what led to the look of the car behind me. The build started out with a $1 Subaru 360 shell that I purchased off the Grassroots Motorsports forum. I bought a $300 Subaru GC8 Brighton off the forum as well. Used that for the rear uprights. The front uprights and engine and drivetrain are from a 2002 Subaru Outback, 2.5 liter that I bought local to me. And then I was able to, for both those vehicles, recoup the full value of the vehicles. So I got the engine, uprights, brakes, all for $0. I tried to reuse as much Subaru parts as I could. One thing I wanted to do was kind of keep the car all Subaru, just because I thought that told the best story and kept the theme going the most. Things like using the steering rack from the Subaru. For brake master cylinders, I'm using stock Subaru master cylinders, the stock brake pedal cluster flipped over and modified. Normally Subarus have hung pedals. They're now floor mounted, so I had to do a little bit of modification there. The chassis is built to full NASA and SCCA wheel-to-wheel specs using 4130 chromoly. The rest of the chassis is mostly 1-inch square tube, so kind of built like the low-cost kind of theory of building cars with 1-inch square tube. It's a pretty well triangulated chassis. Once you build the spec cage, you wind up with a layout that's pretty rigid. The lower frame rails to maintain NHRA compliance are a 2x2 tube section. That's to meet the requirements for a modified chassis for NHRA. And so the chassis, once I kind of built the passenger area and the cage cell, from there, I was able to use went through the FSE program at my school and did a lot of studying of like the Carroll Smith book series, and he does a string computer to develop suspensions. I've developed several suspensions before, the entire geometry, swing arm length, and roll centers, center of gravity, all that kind of analysis. But I used a string computer for this one to try to be a little more basic than using computer software. The basic design has got fairly high roll centers. They're about 6.5 inches in the front and 7 inches in the back. That, coupled with the really low CG, enables me to not have to run sway bars, so that kept costs down to not have to have extra linkages for sway bars. The suspension itself is all pull rods with bell cranks. I built, because the car is going to go through an evolution and needs to be used for multiple purposes, autocross and drag, requiring as I've learned, dramatically different spring rates. Having adjustability in the spring rate is a really good thing to do. So what I did in the bell cranks is I've got multiple shock positions and an adjustable pull rod position, and that enables me to change the ratio of the bell crank, which enables the wheel rates of the car to be changed from a good sporty, like 2.8 hertz up to 5.2 hertz, which once the car has the full aero that's going to go on it for next year, will be a much more appropriate, very firm spring rate. Handling on the car, it works way better than it should for how much setup it has. So we literally got it done the day before I came down. I drove it about, my driveway's about 150 feet long, and I drove it out of my driveway to turn it around to load it on the trailer. So that was the only driving it had. I got here, did a string alignment in the parking lot before the autocross, and that's all the setup it really had. And for that level of setup, the driving experience was really good. The car's fairly neutral. It's compliant to inputs. You can get it to its natural tendency in tight corners, seem to be a little bit of understeer, but if you did a little trail braking, both myself and the pro driver discovered with a little bit of trail braking, you could get the understeer to go away and just get a nice, gentle oversteer. The engine has enough power that you can use throttle to adjust it. Despite having an open diff, the car is able to, once the engine has power to kind of start to step the back end out, it's able to keep both tires spinning and control a nice gentle slide towards the outside of a corner. So in that way you can adjust the balance to where the car feels almost neutral in cornering, which is the way I like it. It's a little bit frantic to drive. The steering ratio is quite quick, but it's not heavy steering. Because the front of the car is very light, the steering effort is low. So you're able to respond really easily to inputs, and it was really easy to control in slaloms. The tight corners didn't pose a lot of issues with it. So I was really pleased for the level of setup with how well it did. I'm excited to get some more tuning on it and get a little bit better setup and see what it's really capable of. So next year, the car is definitely going to come back. The idea of the car is to make it look like an LMP car. Obviously, I've got the structure in place, the way the fenders sit relative to the body, the narrowness of the tub, right? It's got that silhouette that I want, but a Le Mans car doesn't have this much gaps and openings, so it's gonna get, the fenders are gonna get finished out. It's gonna have a element connecting the front of the hood up to the wheel wells, kind of look something like the Porsche 919 LMP car, a little bit like a Praga R1. I'm gonna treat the back of the front fenders similar to the Praga R1, and work on airflow management around the car, and to try to get, add a diffuser, add a big rear wing, probably gonna add a fin, and again, it's maybe not as effective at autocross, but because the car is gonna get used for track days long term, it will be effective there. Ultimately, I really want to finish the car and have it built to a really high quality with paint and look like an LMP car, and then get it and take it to the Ultimate Track Car Challenge and run it there, where it will look like a real race car and play with real race cars and hopefully be very fast, but have only been $2,000 and look like this, or look like it's supposed to.
Support brands that support Grassroots Motorsports. Get your chemical solutions from CRC Industries. Visit crcindustries.com to learn more.